I thought I knew my father. I thought I understood the man who raised me, the man whose voice filled our house, the man whose presence defined my idea of family. I believed our story was simple. Flawed, yes. Imperfect, of course. But whole. I was wrong. Because there is a kind of betrayal that doesn't scream. It whispers. And when you finally hear it, you realize it's been there your entire life. I want you to imagine something. Imagine discovering that the person who shaped your world was living another one right beside it. Not a mistake, not a moment of weakness, but a fully built life. Another home, another set of memories, another version of him that you were never meant to see. And the worst part? He never planned to tell me. Growing up, my father wasn't cruel. He wasn't absent. He showed up. He laughed with us. He argued. He gave advice. He played the role well. So well, in fact, that I never questioned it. But now, looking back, there were cracks. Phone calls that ended too quickly. Trips that didn't add up. Silences where explanations should have been. At the time, I called it adulthood, responsibility, stress. Now I know what it really was. It was division. He wasn't just splitting time. He was splitting himself. And none of us knew. Until I met them. It wasn't dramatic. No confrontation. No shouting. Just a moment. A glance. A name spoken casually that landed like a weapon in my chest. I remember the feeling clearly. The ground didn't move. The room didn't spin. But something inside me cracked open. Because suddenly, I was standing face to face with people who shared my blood, but not my life. They looked familiar in ways that hurt. A smile that mirrored his. Eyes I had seen in the mirror. And in that moment, I understood something devastating. I wasn't just meeting strangers. I was meeting the evidence. Evidence that my childhood had been edited. That parts of my father had been hidden from me. I didn't know whether to feel anger, or grief, or shame. Because betrayal doesn't arrive cleanly. It arrives tangled with love. I loved my father. And suddenly, I didn't know who he was. That's when the real pain began. Not the secret. Not the second family. But the question that followed me everywhere. Which version of him was real? And even harder, what does that make me? Because when a parent keeps a life hidden, it doesn't just fracture families. It fractures identity. And I had no idea how deep that fracture went until I tried to put myself back together. I didn't know what to say when I met them, because words suddenly felt dangerous. Every sentence carried consequences. Every question felt like it might collapse something fragile. They didn't know who I was. Not really. To them, I was just another stranger standing too close, another face passing through their day. But I knew. I knew the truth before they ever did. I saw it in the details. The way one of them tilted their head when they listened. The familiar cadence in their laugh. It felt like looking at a reflection that didn't belong to me, like my life had been copied and placed somewhere else. I remember standing there, nodding politely, smiling when expected, while my chest tightened with every breath. Because this wasn't just discovery, it was collision. Two worlds touching for the first time. And I was the only one who could feel the impact. They spoke about him casually, affectionately, the way families do when they feel safe. They mentioned habits I recognized, stories I had heard before, only told differently. Same man, different narrative. And something inside me started to unravel. Because I realized he hadn't just lied to us, he had divided his truth. He had learned how to be two men without either family seeing the full picture. I wondered if he loved them the way he loved us, or if love had become something he rationed. And then the thought hit me, harder than anything else. If he could hide them from me, what else had he hidden? Memories replayed in my mind with new meaning. Excuses that once sounded reasonable now felt rehearsed. Moments I brushed off as normal distance now looked like deliberate absence. And suddenly, my childhood didn't feel innocent anymore. It felt curated, edited. I left that place feeling heavier than when I arrived. Not because I had learned something new, but because something old had broken. The image of my father I had carried my entire life could no longer stand on its own. It cracked under the weight of reality. I wanted to confront him immediately, to demand answers, to force him to explain how he could live like this. But another part of me hesitated, because I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the truth. Truth has a way of finalizing things. Once spoken, there is no return to innocence. And deep down, I knew whatever he said would not undo what I had seen. So I waited. And waiting was its own kind of torture. Every interaction with him felt staged. Every smile felt loaded. I watched him more closely than ever before. Not as a child, but as someone seeing a stranger. And that shift hurt more than anger, because anger still assumes connection. Disappointment assumes distance. I wondered how long he had been carrying this secret, how many lies it took to maintain it, how many moments of guilt he must have swallowed, or if guilt had simply faded with time. That thought terrified me, because if someone can live a double life long enough, does it stop feeling like a lie? Or does it become normal? And if it became normal for him, what did that say about the foundation of our family? I felt torn in ways I didn't know how to explain. loyalty pulling me in one direction, truth pulling me in another. I didn't want to destroy my family, but I couldn't unknow what I knew. And the most painful realization of all was that this secret didn't belong to just one family anymore. It belonged to me. And sooner or later, I would have to decide what to do with it. I couldn't carry it anymore. The weight of knowing was heavier than the fear of asking. Secrets don't stay quiet forever. They rot from the inside. So I confronted him. Not dramatically, not with raised voices, just the truth placed gently and unbearably between us. I watched his face change when he realized what I knew. Not anger, not denial, recognition. The kind that comes when a door you worked your whole life to keep closed suddenly opens. He didn't ask how I found out. That told me everything. He sat down slowly, as if his body had been waiting for this moment. And then he said my name, the same way he used to when I was a child. That almost broke me, because for a second, I wanted him to still be my father. Not the man who lied, not the man who divided his life, just my father. He spoke quietly, carefully, like someone stepping through emotional landmines. He didn't excuse himself, but he didn't fully own it either. He talked about complexity, about mistakes, about love being complicated. Each word landed wrong, because what he called complexity, I felt as betrayal. He said he never meant to hurt anyone. That sentence echoed in my head. Because intention doesn't erase damage. You don't get credit for not meaning to break something, when you knew it would shatter if discovered. I asked him the question that had been haunting me. Did you love them the same? He didn't answer right away. Silence stretched between us, and in that silence, I felt something in me collapse. Because hesitation is an answer. He finally said he loved us all, but love divided is still divided. And I realized then, he didn't live two lives because he was confused. He lived two lives because he believed he could manage the cost. That realization hurt more than the secret itself, because it meant the damage wasn't accidental. It was calculated survival. I felt anger rise, hot, sharp, but beneath it was grief. Grief for the man I thought he was. Grief for the childhood that now felt dishonest. Grief for the version of myself that trusted without question. I asked him why. Why risk everything? Why build a lie this big? He looked tired, smaller somehow. And that terrified me, because I realized something unsettling. He wasn't a villain. He was human, flawed, weak, and capable of hurting the people closest to him, while still believing he was doing his best. That truth is harder than hatred, because hatred creates distance. Understanding forces closeness. And I didn't know if I could afford that closeness anymore. I left that conversation changed, not healed, not resolved, just aware. Aware that the man who raised me was not the man I imagined. And worse, that one day I might carry his contradictions too. That thought followed me everywhere. Because when you discover the truth about a parent, you don't just question them, you question yourself. And I was standing at the edge of something irreversible, knowing the next step would decide who I became. I didn't leave with closure. I left with a choice. And that choice haunted me longer than the secret ever did. Because once the truth is exposed, you don't get to decide what happened. You only get to decide what it becomes. For a long time, anger felt easier, cleaner, sharper. Anger gave me somewhere to put the pain. It gave the story a villain. But anger also kept me tied to him. Every thought circled back. Every memory replayed itself with new suspicion. And one night, sitting alone with everything I knew, I realized something that terrified me. If I held on to this forever, I would carry his secret longer than he ever did. That wasn't justice. That was inheritance. I thought about the other family, about the people who never asked to be hidden. They didn't steal anything from me. They were born into the same lie. Different rooms, same foundation. And slowly, painful as it was, my anger began to change shape. It softened into grief. And grief asked harder questions. What does it mean to forgive someone who never fully made it right? What does it mean to love someone you no longer trust the same way? I didn't find answers quickly. I found them quietly. I met them again. This time, not as a collision, but as a choice. I looked at them with clearer eyes, not as evidence, not as a threat, but as people. People shaped by the same man and wounded in different ways. I saw confusion in their kindness, curiosity in their restraint. And in that moment, something unexpected happened. I didn't feel smaller. I felt expanded. Because family is not defined only by secrets or bloodlines. It is defined by what you choose to carry forward. I stopped trying to rewrite the past and started deciding my future. I didn't excuse my father, but I stopped letting his choices define my identity. He was a man who failed in ways that mattered, but his failures were not my blueprint. That realization freed me, not dramatically, not all at once, but steadily. I learned that forgiveness is not approval. It is release. Release from replaying the same pain. release from becoming hardened by someone else's weakness. And the final truth settled in quietly. My father had a secret second family. But the secret didn't have to be my life sentence. I could carry the truth without letting it poison me. I could acknowledge the damage without letting it define my capacity to love. I didn't lose my father that day. I lost the illusion of him. And in its place, I gained something harder, but more honest: perspective. Because growing up isn't about discovering your parents were perfect. It's about realizing they were human and deciding who you will be in response. I chose not to live a divided life. I chose truth, even when it was uncomfortable. I chose to build relationships without hidden rooms, without silent damage passed down quietly. And today, when I look back at that accidental meeting, I no longer see it as the moment my family broke. I see it as the moment I became whole. Because secrets can fracture you, or they can force you to grow. And growth is the only real ending worth choosing.